Sawadee-kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our Pali Canon and English study group where we study the original words of the Buddha to be able to help you understand the teachings that you need to make your way to the enlightened mind. Today we're in chapters 11 through 20 of volume 7. This volume is titled Breathing Mindfulness Meditation. This is a consolidated book that consolidates the teachings of the Buddha about breathing mindfulness meditation in one book to be able to help you understand what he taught on this important topic. Last week we studied chapters 1 through 10, and this week we're going to be in 11 through 20. The way that we do our program is I invite students in Zoom to be able to volunteer to read a chapter. Then if after they're done, I will share some teachings on that. Then I'm going to open up to any and all questions that you guys have related to what the chapter is teaching. So you can ask questions by putting that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So welcome to all of you guys. And if there's anyone in Zoom that would like to volunteer to read, you're more than welcome. I'll call on you and then you'll be able to unmute and read for today. All right, looks like Samantha is volunteering. Go ahead, and then we'll have Marcy after that.
Concentration by mindfulness of breathing leads to the destruction of the taints. Monks. Concentration by mindfulness of breathing, when developed and cultivated, leads to the destruction of the taints or fetters. And how, monks, is concentration by mindfulness of breathing developed and cultivated so that it leads to the destruction of the taints? Here, monks, a monk, having gone to the forest to the foot of a tree or to an empty hut, sits down. Having folded his legs crosswise, straightened his body, and set his mindfulness in front of him, just mindful he breathes in, mindful he breathes out. Breathing in long, he knows, I breathe in long, or breathing out long, he knows, I breathe out long. Breathing in short, he knows, I breathe in short, or breathing out short, he knows, I breathe out short. He trains thus, experiencing the whole body. Repeat as at chapter 1. He trains thus, reflecting on letting go, I will breathe in. He trains thus, reflecting on letting go, I will breathe out. It is in this way, monks, that concentration, by mindfulness of breathing, is developed and cultivated so that it leads to the destruction of the taints.
Okay, thank you, Samantha. So here we've got another chapter from the Buddha describing the benefits of breathing mindfulness meditation. And the Buddha teaches in many different discourses the various benefits. So it's important not to ever look at the teachings of the Buddha in isolation, because here you will see that he's talking about how it eliminates the taints. In another chapter, he might talk about how it helps to cultivate the 7 factors of enlightenment and so forth and so on. You'll see him talk about how breathing mindfulness meditation has multiple benefits. So as you learn more and more the totality of the teachings of the Buddha, you can understand that maybe in one situation, he was teaching about one aspect of breathing mindfulness meditation, and then maybe 2 or 3 years later, or 2 or 3 months later, or maybe 10 or 20 years later, he was teaching another aspect of breathing mindfulness meditation. And what this book has done is it's consolidated it all in one book so that now it reads chapter after chapter after chapter. And you might be confused of why the Buddha taught this way, but remember, you're seeing it in a consolidated form, but this has been consolidated, that these teachings would have been spread out over multiple months and years. So here the Buddha is explaining how mindfulness of breathing or breathing mindfulness meditation leads to the elimination of the taints or the fetters, those 10 individual pollutions that are in the mind, that are, once they're uprooted, this is where the mind is purified and now experiencing the qualities of enlightenment. And then he goes on to explain how to actually do breathing mindfulness meditation, which we studied last week in chapter 1. Here, the Buddha gives step-by-step instructions and guidance of how to actually do meditation. But remember, this is description for you that you learn and you understand, but then you just actually do it. If you've meditated with me any amount of time, you know that I consolidate his guidance into, kind of just a few phrases where you're actually then able to start meditating and getting the real benefit and reaping the rewards of that. But the Buddha goes through and explains in long form how to actually do meditation. So it's something that you would learn and you would understand, but then you would actually just do it. Kind of like when you learned and understood how to brush your teeth, and then at some point you just started doing it. You don't think about every last little step. So here the Buddha, in his typical way of teaching, he talks at the beginning of what he's going to tell you. He then tells it to you, and then he tells you what he told you. There's people today that talk about how in business settings, this is like a wonderful way to teach. The Buddha was doing this 2,500 years ago, and these people might not necessarily be aware that the Buddha did this. But if you go to business seminars or you learn how to do public speaking or things like this, what people usually teach you is tell your audience what you're going to tell them. Then you tell them what you told them. This is a great way to help people to learn. And the Buddha was doing this 2,500 years ago. And you'll see this very common theme throughout his discourses, where he will tell you what he's going to tell you. He will then tell you that particular thing. Then he's going to tell you what he told you. And this is a method of teaching to help people remember what it is that you're actually learning and what he's trying to teach you. So let me know what questions you guys have here. I'm pretty sure you guys know what the 10 fetters are, the taints, but if you need help to understand what those are, let me know and I'll help you to understand that. And keep in mind that if you're reading these books, you've got the words of the Buddha here, you've got the reference that goes back to the original source teachings, and then you've got words from me that are going to help you to further understand it and implement it into your day-to-day life. So you've got this available for you in the books at no cost from our website. So do you guys have any questions on this particular chapter? You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So this next chapter is very similar to the one that we just read. So I don't know that we need to read this one, because what the Buddha is doing here is he's saying, monks, what is that one thing when developed and cultivated is of great fruit and benefit? And then he says it's breathing mindfulness meditation. And then he goes through and explains the same exact thing that we see in chapter 1 being repeated in all these discourses. Then he says, okay, mindfulness of breathing is of great fruit and benefit. So here he's just talking about it generally. The discourse prior to this, he was talking about it a little bit more specifically about how it leads to the elimination of the 10 fetters. And then you'll see other discourses where he's talking about other aspects of breathing mindfulness meditation. So I don't know that we need to read this one because it's very similar to what we just saw with the opening and closing paragraph, just slightly different. So I'm going to move on to chapter 13 here. And Marcy, this particular one, if you would like to read it since you volunteered earlier, we just read this with the previous chapter. This is actually the previous chapter and kind of essentially what Samantha just read in the second chapter. So if you'd like, you can pick it up down here where the Buddha is going to give you various things that breathing mindfulness meditation is doing to be able to help you.
Mind liberated from the taints. I too, monks, before my enlightenment, while I was still unawakened, but intent on awakening, not yet fully enlightened, generally dwelt in this dwelling. While I generally dwelt in this dwelling, neither my body nor my eyes became fatigued, and my mind, by not clinging, was liberated from the taints, fetters. Therefore, monks, if a monk aspires, may neither my body nor my eyes become fatigued, and may my mind, by not clinging, be liberated from the taints. This same concentration by mindfulness of breathing should be closely attended to. Abandoning the memories and intentions connected with the household life. Therefore, monks, if a monk aspires, may the memories, intentions connected with the household life be abandoned by me. This same concentration by mindfulness of breathing should be closely attended to. Avoiding both the unrepulsive and the repulsive, residing equanimous, mindful, and clearly comprehending. Therefore, monks, if a monk aspires, may I reside perceiving the repulsive in the unrepulsive. This same concentration by mindfulness of breathing should be closely attended to. If a monk aspires, may I reside perceiving the unrepulsive in repulsive. This is the same concentration by mindfulness of breathing should be closely attended to. If a monk aspires, may I reside perceiving the repulsive in the unrepulsive and the repulsive. The same concentration of mindfulness of breathing should be closely attended to. If a monk aspires, may I reside perceiving the unrepulsive in the repulsive and the unrepulsive. This same concentration by mindfulness of breathing should be closely attended to. If a monk aspires, avoiding both the unrepulsive and the repulsive, may I reside equanimous, mindful, and clearly comprehending. This same concentration by mindfulness of breathing should be closely attended to. Residing in the first, second, third, and fourth jhana. Therefore, monks, if a monk aspires, may I distant from sense desires, distant from unwholesome mental states, enters and resides in the first jhana, which is with thinking and pondering, based in seclusion, filled with excitement and joy. The same concentration of mindfulness of breathing should be closely attended to. Therefore, monks, if a monk aspires, may I, with the subsiding of thinking and pondering, by gaining inner tranquility and oneness of mind, he enters and resides in the second jhana, which is without thinking and pondering, based in concentration, filled with excitement and joy. The same concentration by mindfulness of breathing should be closely attended to. Therefore, monks, if a monk aspires, may I, with the fading away of excitement, remain imperturbable, unable to be upset or excited, calm, serene, mindful and clearly aware. He experiences himself the joy of which the Noble One says, peaceful is he who resides with equanimity and mindfulness. He enters the third jhana. The same concentration of mindfulness of breathing should be closely attended to. Therefore, monks, if a monk aspires, may I have given up pleasure and pain, and with the fading away of former gladness and sadness, he enters and resides in the fourth jhana, which is beyond pleasure and pain, and purified by equanimity and mindfulness. The same concentration by mindfulness of breathing should be closely attended to.
If you can pause
residing in formless perception.
If you can pause right there, Marcy.
Sure.
Let me teach all of these since they're so diverse, and then we'll pick it up from there. As the Buddha was teaching here at the first part, he was explaining how breathing mindfulness meditation is of great fruit and benefit. And then he explains how to do breathing mindfulness meditation. But then he goes into details of how breathing mindfulness meditation is beneficial. Well, here he's talking about how it helps to eliminate the taints or the pollutions, which that's what's going to lead to enlightenment when you eliminate the 10 fetters. Then he says, okay, it helps to eliminate these memories of the past, essentially what he's talking about. Here he's talking to ordained practitioners and suggesting to them that they should work with breathing mindfulness meditation to abandon the memories of the household life. What he's really talking about here is the past. Because let's just say you've left the home life and now you've entered into this life of homelessness. And now maybe there were certain pleasurable things in your past that your mind is still clinging to. Maybe there's that special bed or a special pillow or some other thing that is back home that now that you have entered into this life of as an ordained practitioner, that maybe your mind is clinging to that and you're feeling discontent because of the mind's craving and clinging. So the Buddha teaches that breathing mindfulness meditation is going to help you to eliminate that, where the mind can cut off and let go. You might actually have this too. You might have had certain pleasurable things in the past that you're now forming feelings on today. And now you're having conditioned pleasant feelings based on things that happened in the past that maybe you no longer have those things, or maybe you're aspiring to have those things in the future. Or maybe there are certain painful things that happened in the past. Maybe you were physically abused or sexually abused or something like this. And now you're forming feelings in the present moment based on things in the past, where you can train your mind to let that go. You'll always have the memories that these things have occurred, but you can get to the point where you're not clinging to those experiences and forming feelings in the present moment based on those things. And it's breathing mindfulness meditation that's going to help you to be able to clear that out. So the Buddha here talking about letting go of these memories, he's talking about essentially letting go of clinging to these past experiences so you're not forming feelings in the present moment based on things in the past. Then he talks about avoiding both the unrepulsive and the repulsive. Another way to think about this, which might be easier for you to be able to understand this, is think about it as agreeable contact and disagreeable contact. That the mind, because of its craving and clinging, it wants agreeable contact permanently. It keeps wanting this central desire to be fulfilled. And when it gets what it wants, it experiences the pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. And when the mind experiences disagreeable contact, It experiences the painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, and all these other things. So the Buddha is saying, okay, if you would like to reside equanimous, where there's calmness and composure in the mind, where you have mindfulness or awareness of mind, and you have clear comprehension, which is concentration, and all of these things is what leads to wise decision making. You guys have probably heard me talk about a calm mind leads to mindfulness or awareness of mind. A mindful mind leads to concentration or focus and clarity. Then that leads to you being able to access your wisdom. So that's why the Buddha puts it in this order, because it helps you to be able to get to wise decision making. So as you're removing the pollutions out of your mind to get to a purified mind, you're starting to make wiser and wiser decisions based on the natural laws. And that's what's going to ultimately extinguish all your unwholesome karma from your unwise decisions in the past. If you couldn't have a calm mind, thus have mindfulness and concentration, you wouldn't be able to access your wisdom to make wise decisions to extinguish any unwholesome results that are coming back to you. So the Buddha is teaching you here to not perceive the agreeable contact or disagreeable contact in any sort of way. That as long as you have craving in your mind, you'll crave that agreeable contact and you get those pleasant feelings, but that's not permanent. And the mind just keeps craving for that permanence. Or when the mind experiences that disagreeable contact, it doesn't like that impermanence and it really wants to get back to those pleasant feelings. So you need to be able to train the mind to understand this agreeable and disagreeable contact is only happening because of craving, desire, attachment in the mind. Or another way to say that is because of the unrepulsive and the repulsive, the mind keeps experiencing the up and down, and it can't reside in calmness or equanimous. So therefore, it can't have mindfulness or awareness of mind, it can't have concentration, and you can't access your wisdom to make wise decisions. So that's why the Buddha here is saying breathing mindfulness meditation is going to lead to the elimination of the seeing things as unrepulsive or repulsive, or it's going to lead to the elimination of seeing things as agreeable and disagreeable. That it's no longer agreeable or disagreeable contact, it's just contact. So when you're driving down the road and you hear that wonderful music coming out of somebody's car, it's just wonderful music. It's impermanent. Sure, let's have fun and let's enjoy it, but let's understand that it's not permanent and don't allow the mind to cling to it and form inner feelings on it. So that way, when the next music comes up and it's music that you don't typically listen to, you don't need to be frustrated or agitated or see this music as disagreeable. It's just contact. It's just sound coming in through the ears. And you don't need to see it as agreeable or disagreeable or unrepulsive or repulsive. That way you can remain calm and mindful and concentrated and access your wisdom. And then breathing mindfulness meditation leads to the development of the mind to the point where you're experiencing the jhanas, those enhanced qualities of mind prior to the first stage of enlightenment. You would need more than just meditation in order to get to the jhanas. You wouldn't be able to get to the jhanas, for example, if you were being bitter and harsh and hostile through your speech and actions, and you were using substances that cause heedlessness. It would be very challenging to move the mind into the jhanas when those kinds of things are going on. So you need much more than just meditation, but meditation is kind of like the catalyst or the catapult that's going to help you to be able to move into the jhanas, because now with that mental discipline, you'll be able to improve your moral conduct. And then this is what's going to help you to move into the jhanas, is having the entire Eightfold Path really well put together. And then the Buddha describes essentially what the jhanas are. And now we get down to this next piece where the Buddha is going to talk further about these other attainments that the mind can experience as a result of breathing mindfulness meditation. It's not just the jhanas that the mind can experience, but there's these other attainments as well. So Marcy, if you'd like to pick it up here, you're more than welcome.
Sure. I just need to plug my computer in. It's telling me my batteries are going low.
Sure.
Residing in the formless perceptions. Therefore, monks, if a monk aspires, may I, with the complete transcendence of perceptions of form, with the passing away of the perceptions of sense reactions, with non-attention to perceptions of diversity, aware that space is infinite, enter and reside in the base of the infinite of space. This same concentration by mindfulness of breathing should be closely attended to. Therefore, monks, if a monk aspires, may I be completely transcending the base of the infinite of space, aware that consciousness is infinite, enter and reside in the base of the infinity of consciousness. This same concentration by mindfulness of breathing should be closely attended to. Therefore, monks, if a monk aspires, may I be completely transcending the base of the infinity of consciousness, aware there is nothing, enter and reside in the base of nothingness. The same concentration of mindfulness of breathing should be closely attended to. Therefore, monks, if a monk aspires, may I be completely transcending the base of nothingness, enter and reside in the base of neither perception nor non-perception. The same concentration by mindfulness of breathing should be closely attended to. Residing in the elimination of perception and feeling. Therefore, monks, if a monk aspires, may I be completely transcending the base of neither perception nor non-perception, and to reside in the elimination of perception and feeling. The same concentration by mindfulness of breathing should be closely attended to.
Can I pause you there for a second, Marcy?
Sure. Yes.
Okay. So down here, I'm pretty sure that what I've done is described these attainments. Yes, here they are right here. So down here, I've described in my text what is the base of infinity of consciousness so that you can understand what that is. And then I've described the base of nothingness here. I've also described the base of neither perception nor non-perception so you can understand what that is. These are attainments that happen typically through the jhanas as you're moving through the jhanas. These are certain attainments that you can experience. Not everybody will attain these or experience these, but some people will and some people won't. Some of them, it's all practitioners will attain this on your way to enlightenment, but some of the others aren't attained by everyone. So here you can see this particular attainment isn't experienced by all practitioners. So you can actually go through and learn this. I don't typically teach it because it's not something that everybody's going to experience, and it's not required for you to experience these in order to be able to get to enlightenment. So it's here for you to be able to learn and read and understand. If you have questions, we can talk about it. But here, this is what I suggest you to learn so that you can understand what these attainments are. And you'll see these referenced every once in a while in other parts of the teachings of the Buddha. But even the Buddha doesn't even really teach these very much throughout his teachings. You'll very rarely see these even referred to. But they are things that you can experience on your way to enlightenment. And then we have some additional things here, which is the remaining part of this particular chapter. But let me answer Vibhav's question first. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, David. Can you go down to the base of the infinity of consciousness?
Sure.
So this is basically talking about multiple lives of past lives.
Exactly. This is where someone on their way to enlightenment, they can experience the recall or the observation of their past lives. And it's not going to happen for everybody, but it can happen. It's possible. And this is called the base of infinity of consciousness, where you can see that the consciousness isn't just experiencing what it's experiencing in this life, but there's these multiple countless lives in the past, and there will be future lives in the future if an individual doesn't get to enlightenment.
So I guess my question is that if the understanding of rebirth is so central to the understanding of the path, these teachings, understanding that you're born multiple times and then your karma is basically a collection of all your past actions. It's a little bit, I guess, not clearly understanding why everybody does not experience it, because it seems that something that is so central to understanding that you have so many past life, everybody would actually experience this in some way, because otherwise you're trying to figure this out through other means, saying that, oh, maybe there is a past life. Something so central seems to me most people should be able to see the past lives.
Yeah, that's just not the way it is, though, Vibhav. I know that's what you would like to occur, but that's just not the way it is. There's 17 different ways that I documented that helps an individual to independently verify the cycle of rebirth. This is just one of those ways. This is a very profound way that if somebody does experience this, you have no doubt that there's the cycle of rebirth and that you're in that cycle of rebirth. But there's other ways too. There's 16 other ways to be able to independently verify the cycle of rebirth. And it's all these things coming together. This is one where if you experience this, without a doubt, you know the cycle of rebirth is true. But if you, out of those 16, if you can confirm through 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them, you'll have the confidence that the cycle of rebirth is true. So this isn't absolutely required in order to be able to independently verify the cycle of rebirth. But it is something that some people experience. It just depends on the state of the consciousness and how well developed it was in the previous life, so that in this life, it would be able to observe past lives. Because if somebody wasn't, say, on the path in their previous life, and this is their first life that they get onto the path, they wouldn't necessarily observe their past lives because their mind is so congested and so polluted in this life that maybe it's everything they can do just to get to enlightenment. So the mind doesn't have the capability to see the past lives, but it has the ability to confirm all these other teachings to ultimately get to enlightenment.
So I guess a follow-up question is, when somebody does get to enlightenment, at that point, will they be able to verify it? Maybe not on the way, but once if they say this is their first life and they are able to get to enlightenment, will they then be able to see it, or this is just after they achieve enlightenment, or even after you achieve enlightenment, they may not see it?
Yeah, if this is going to happen, it's going to happen on your way to enlightenment. It's not going to happen once the mind's actually enlightened. It's going to happen on the way.
Okay, so even after you enlightened, you may not see your past lives.
Yes, there's enlightened beings that have never observed their past lives, but they've done enough independent verification on other aspects of the teachings to independently verify the cycle of rebirth, and they know that it's true, but they just haven't seen their past lives.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, let's see. Samantha is saying, where is the list? I'm not sure what list you're asking for there, Samantha. Maybe you could be a little bit more clear for me. And okay, Samantha's raising her hand. Go ahead, ma'am. Oh, I know what you're asking now. The list of 17 things, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
So if you go to volume 11, chapter 105, and if you download it from the website, that would be best because I put that in there about maybe 8 months ago. But if you have a book that's been printed out in the last 8 months, it'll be in there as well. But it's volume 11, chapter 105. And we'll talk about those things when we get to that chapter in this program. But if you'd like to go look for it now, you're more than welcome. That's where it's at. Okay, let me see if we have any other questions. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions. So now, Marcy, let's go back and finish up your chapter here. And we're right here.
Okay. All that is felt, not being delighted in, will become cool right here. When monks, the concentration of mindfulness of breathing has been developed and cultivated in this way, if he feels a pleasant feeling, he understands it is impermanent. He understands it is not held to. He understands it is not delighted in. If he feels a painful feeling, he understands it is impermanent. He understands it is not held to. He understands it is not delighted in. If he feels neither painful nor pleasant feeling, he understands it is impermanent. He understands it is not held to. He understands it is not delighted in. If he feels a pleasant feeling, he feels it without holding on to it. If he feels a painful feeling, he feels it without holding on to it. If he feels neither a painful nor pleasant feeling, he feels it without holding on to it. When he feels a feeling terminating with the body, he understands. I feel a feeling terminating with the body. When he feels a feeling terminating with life, he understands, I feel feeling terminating with life. He understands, with the breakup of the body following the exhaustion of life, all that is felt, not being delighted in it, will come to cool right here. Just as, monks, an oil lamp burns in dependence on the oil and the wick, and with the exhaustion of the oil and the wick, it is extinguished through lack of fuel, so too monks. When a monk feels a feeling terminating with the body, he understands, I feel a feeling terminating with the body. When he feels a feeling terminating with life, he understands, I feel a feeling terminating with life. He understands, with the breakup of the body, following the exhaustion of life, all that is felt is not being delighted in, will become cool right here.
Okay, thank you, Marcy. Okay, so this first part of this one, he's explaining how breathing mindfulness meditation leads to an individual understanding not to cling to these particular feelings that are the conditioned feelings, the discontentedness, the pleasant, painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. The mind understands with wisdom through training outside of meditation, but also in meditation itself, that all these conditioned feelings are impermanent and they should not be held to or delighted in, because as soon as you allow the mind to do that, it's forming that conditioned feeling. So on your way to enlightenment, you're going to experience some of these conditioned feelings, but you need to be able to understand, don't cling to it, that it's impermanent, cut it off and let it go. And that's what he's saying here, that if he feels a pleasant feeling, he feels it without holding on to it, or a painful one, or a feeling that is neither painful nor pleasant, because on your way to enlightenment, you're going to still feel some of these conditioned feelings, and you would like to catch it sooner and sooner. And that's what the Buddha is talking about here, that you would like to catch those feelings that are arising as a bodily sensation, that you can cut it off and let it go as a bodily sensation. And that's what's going to essentially rewire the mind, so it's not forming the conditioned feeling. And having done that, then he's saying, okay, everything will become cool right here, meaning the mind will be calm and cool. If you think about when you get angry, there's all this heat that comes up. Like you could just be sitting in a chair somewhere, but if you're getting angry, you might feel this heat rising up through the torso, up to the neck and the face and the head. You can feel this heat rising up, and oh my goodness, you're ready to just crush something, right? I'm sure you've experienced that before. Well, if you eliminate the conditioned feelings and the causes of those, which are cravings, desires, attachments, then everything will become cool right here. Everything will be calm and collected. You won't have to experience all of this. And that's what the Buddha is describing here with this analogy of the oil lamp. That just like the oil lamp is dependent on its oil and its wick, and with the exhaustion of the oil in the wick, there is no more fuel. The same thing is true, that if you can get to a point where you're cutting off and letting go at the bodily sensations, you're going to extinguish all those cravings, desires, attachments. The causes and conditions that are producing the discontent feelings will be exhausted. So there's no more fuel. So therefore, the mind will become cool. It'll be calm and collected. So that's what the Buddha is explaining, that breathing mindfulness meditation leads to this, where you can be able to cut off internally and let go of any conditioned feelings that are arising. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this section of this particular discourse. It looks like Marcy has a question. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Teacher David. Maybe this might not be a question for this class, but when you were reading through here, discussing this, it came to mind. I've noticed that the mind now, during certain conversations, is, taking in what's going on in the conversation, but it's almost as if the mind can, I don't want to use the words like predict or perceive, but can see certain cravings arise, and then is able to say, oh, I know how that person's going to react. And then that comes to fruition. So it's starting to do these situations where, like, I'm not really engaged in the conversation. I more or less feel as if I'm like a bystander, like a fly on the wall, kind of watching things unravel. But the mind is able to notice, to see that, oh, that I can see that coming. I can see that coming. There's no reaction. I don't get involved. I don't sit there and say, oh, this is what's going to happen, but I can see the mind is doing this. And I'm curious to know, is this just the mind becoming more clear and recognizing cravings in other people? Is that what's happening in the mind?
Yes, that's part of it, that the mind becomes very empathetic. When we talk about empathy, what I mean by that is you understand people's feelings. Where oftentimes when people talk about empathy, they talk about someone who understands their feelings and shares in those feelings. That's not the kind of empathy that you would ever be interested in cultivating, because you don't need to share in someone's feelings. Just because someone's angry or sad doesn't mean you need to be angry and sad. But the part where people talk about understanding people's feelings, this is what true empathy is, and what is actually going to be cultivated in the mind, that you're going to understand exactly how people feel and why they feel it, because you understand the mind through the teachings of the Buddha. So that's part of it, that you're starting to understand and be able to see that very clearly. This is where the Buddha calls someone who gets closer to enlightenment and who's actually enlightened. He talks about how you have clear vision, meaning you understand everything that's happening right in front of you. You understand exactly what's happening and why, because you can see all the causes and conditions that are leading to it. So that's part of it. But then there's also a part that could potentially be happening here as well. You'll have to see other parts of your life, is there's omniscience that can be experienced, where an individual can know the future before it actually occurs. This is something that happens when the mind's starting to awaken. So these are two different things, but they could actually be pointing to the same thing, which is you understanding how somebody's going to react or how somebody's going to experience that particular situation. And you just know it before it even happens, because you understand cause and effect, the natural law of karma, and the causes and conditions that leads to any particular feeling or emotion. And then there can also be some omniscience, where the mind just knows the future without even anybody ever saying it or telling you about that thing.
And with this empathy that may be developing in the mind, it was an unfortunate conversation. I shouldn't say unfortunate, because it was like an opportunity for learning, but the way this person was being spoken to, I had like this compassion, not only for the person that was kind of doing the aggressive speech, but also this compassion for this person that was receiving it, and understanding that, they had a particular craving on how they wanted to be perceived by this person that was giving them a lashing. And the person that was giving the lashing didn't see this person as reaching the expectations that they were holding. So I was seeing all of this, but I had this, I want to make sure that I'm using craving here, but I'm interested in using the correct words of what the mind was experiencing. It was like, and maybe, it was a little bit overwhelming for the mind at the time, because it was something very new. Like, it was just all of a sudden, like, everything was just like crisp. I could hear crisp, clear, and I was taking in, but I could feel like this sense of like compassion for these people and their struggles to try to communicate with each other. But there was all this craving and hostility. So.
Yeah, that's good. And, when these kinds of things are happening, you don't have to understand it all right away, exactly when it happens, or within a few hours of it happening. So you can keep reflecting on this and keep looking at that experience, and you're going to glean insight from it maybe later. So don't feel like you have to put this pressure or have this craving or desire to understand it right now, today. But this is what an individual is going to experience, is that you're going to see situations happening in front of you. You know exactly why it's happening. And yes, there can be compassion that comes up, where you have compassion for both people. And that's what's really helpful, because sometimes people experience compassion for the person who's the receiver of that harsh speech, but then they hate the person who's doing it. So if you're having compassion for both parties, that's where you would like to be. So you can keep reflecting on that. And I'm sure there's still some things that you can take away as insight. So don't feel like you have to understand it all today, though.
And, because I was knowing that I wasn't completely able to understand it, I didn't intervene, nor did I think it was my place to intervene. So I just kind of just took it all in and just sat back and didn't become involved. So I think that was probably the wisest thing for me to do at that point in time, because I didn't have the source to really provide anything. I just saw what was going on.
Yeah, that can be very empowering to the mind too, to see that you can, experience something like that without the urge or the craving to step in and do something. Or if there was the urge, being able to restrain the mind and not allow it to do that, because it's not wise for us to necessarily step into those kinds of situations. So that can be very empowering to the mind to see that you have that discipline to not step in. So you can learn from that, because you need to be selective about how you do things in the world and making wise decisions. And it's not always wise for you to step into those kinds of things. And it sounds like it's good that you didn't. So learn from that. And then each time you experience one of these, you'll be able to, be that much more disciplined with your mind and know with 100% certainty whether it's wise or unwise to step in. In most cases, it's not wise.
Right. Thank you so much, Teacher David. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, let me see. We don't have any questions anywhere else. So let's go to the next chapter. This next chapter is chapter 14. Is there someone who would like to read this? Oh, Yusuf, go ahead, sir.
Hello, David.
Hello.
The enlightened factors accompanied by breathing mindfulness meditation. Monks, mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation, when developed and cultivated, is of great fruit and benefit. And how monks is mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation developed and cultivated so that it is of great fruit and benefit. Here, a monk develops the enlightenment factor of mindfulness accompanied by mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation, based upon seclusion, freedom from strong feelings, and elimination, maturing and released. He develops the enlightenment factor of investigation accompanied by mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation, based upon seclusion, freedom from strong feelings, and elimination, maturing and release. He develops the enlightenment factor of energy accompanied by mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation, based upon seclusion, freedom from strong feelings, and elimination, mature and release. He develops the enlightenment factor of joy accompanied by mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation, based upon seclusion, freedom from strong feelings, and elimination, maturing and release. He develops the enlightenment factor of tranquility accompanied by mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation, based upon seclusion, freedom from strong feelings, and elimination, maturing and release. We develop the enlightenment factor of concentration accompanied by mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation, based upon seclusion, freedom from strong feelings, and elimination, maturing and release. He develops the enlightenment factor of equanimity accompanied by mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation, based upon seclusion, freedom from strong feelings, and elimination, maturing and release. It is in this way, monks, that mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation is developed and cultivated so that it is of great fruit and benefit.
Okay, thank you, sir. So I think we had a chapter last week where the Buddha was also describing how breathing mindfulness meditation leads to the development of the 7 factors of enlightenment, and we talked about this. So mindfulness is that awareness of mind, and more specifically, the 4 foundations of mindfulness from the Eightfold Path. That's the first factor of enlightenment. And when we say factor of enlightenment, these are actually tools that you're going to use to fine-tune the mind. This isn't to determine whether you are enlightened or you're not enlightened. It helps to pick the mind up out of a complacent, dull, sluggish condition, and it helps to bring it down from this excited, overactive condition. And it's your mindfulness, that first factor of enlightenment, that's going to help you to be aware of whether the mind is sluggish, dull, and lethargic, whether it's complacent or not. And you need to bring in the enlightenment factors of investigation, energy, and joy. Investigation is to investigate the teachings of the Buddha, because when your mind is complacent and dull and lethargic, the last thing you're thinking about is picking up a book and learning about the teachings, or coming to the temple, or talking to a teacher, or watching a video or something like this. You would like to investigate the teachings, and that's going to take the mind in the opposite direction of its sluggishness and complacency. And that's where you're going to be learning the teachings that you need in order to be able to liberate the mind. And now the mind is going to have this energy that springs up, this ambition, this vigor, this enthusiasm. And then there's going to be this joy, this unconditioned gladness that comes into the mind. And then because you're practicing that mindfulness, whenever you see that the mind is overactive or excited, then you bring in these other enlightenment factors to fine tune the mind and bring it out of that state into the middle, where you can practice tranquility, which is the peacefulness, the calmness, the serenity, the concentration, which is the focus, because that's what's going to allow you to be able to do that. And then you practice the equanimity, which is the calmness and composure and evenness of temper. And when you're doing this, the Buddha is describing here that when you're applying the 7 factors of enlightenment, the mind's going to mature in release to get free of these strong feelings. Because when you get into that second and third stage of enlightenment, to other people from the outside looking in, you could actually look like you're enlightened, because all the struggles and difficulties that you're having are really internal, that you're no longer being outwardly frustrated or bitter or harsh or anything like that. You're long beyond that by the time you get to the second or the third stage of enlightenment. But now when you're in those second and third stage of enlightenment, there's a little tweaking that you're doing within your own mind in order to be able to get your mind to that fourth stage of enlightenment. And the 7 factors of enlightenment are part of the tools that you're using to be able to do that. And it's the breathing mindfulness meditation that's going to continue to help to cultivate the mind and help you to be able to then practice the 7 factors of enlightenment, where you're accumulating and accumulating and accumulating the benefits. Or another way to say that is that the mind is maturing and maturing and maturing. And what the mind's going to ultimately do as it's maturing is it's going to release the attachments or the cravings that are taking it into this sluggish condition, and that's taking it into this overactive and excited condition, so that the mind can be peaceful and joyful in the present moment. So it's breathing mindfulness meditation, teaching the mind to cut off and let go, that's going to help you to get rid of those cravings, desires, attachments, that's taking it into the sluggish or the overactive state. And this is the mind maturing in release, so you can get freedom from these strong feelings and eliminate the conditional feelings. So it's these 7 factors of enlightenment that are cultivated through, yes, practicing breathing mindfulness meditation, because the mindfulness is important to be able to put these 7 factors of enlightenment in place. But then you're going to need to practice these 7 factors in your day-to-day life, so that whenever you see the mind sluggish or excited, that you can bring the mind to the middle by practicing either investigation, energy, and joy, or tranquility, concentration, and equanimity. You guys have any questions on this one, where the Buddha is describing how breathing mindfulness meditation is of great fruit and benefit, because it's going to help you to develop the 7 factors of enlightenment and ultimately eliminate the cravings that are taking the mind into the sluggish condition or the excited condition. So it looks like Yusuf has a question. Go ahead, sir.
So you did define the equanimity and the tranquility. Would you please give the differences between them, because they both look similar to be calm and at ease?
Yeah, the tranquility is just overall calmness and serenity. The equanimity is the composure of the mind, even in a difficult situation. So where you get a phone call that your mom's being rushed to the hospital in the back of an ambulance, if you have equanimity, you would be able to stay calm and composed in that situation. Where the tranquility is also the peacefulness and calmness, but the extra component of a difficult situation isn't there, that it's just generally calm and serene.
So for confirmation, when I see the mind, when I talk quickly and with a loud voice, and see myself walk quickly as if I were running, I put the effort to walk more and more slowly, and speak more and more slowly, and put pauses between sentences, to speak so slow to calm the mind. Would that be applying equanimity or tranquility, or are there more that one can do?
Yeah, that's cutting off craving, desire, attachment, and helping the mind get to the point where it can be tranquil and it can practice equanimity. That's what you would like to be able to do. And both of these qualities are working together hand in hand. But equanimity is in a difficult situation, you can practice equanimity where the mind's calm and composed, where tranquility is just a general overall peacefulness and serenity. But it's getting rid of the cravings, which you're talking about as the mind maturing and maturing and maturing, which is ultimately going to lead to the release, which will allow you to practice these 7 factors of enlightenment. By the time someone gets to enlightenment, even though these aren't considered the factors that determine whether you are or aren't enlightened, by the time you get to enlightenment, you're actually practicing all 7 at all times, essentially. But what you're doing on your way to enlightenment is you're invoking the enlightenment factors that you need to either move the mind from complacency to the middle, or from excited to the middle. And then this tranquility and equanimity, those are just essentially very similar, but one is overall peacefulness and serenity, where equanimity is in a specific situation where there's a difficult thing happening. You can maintain your calmness and composure there.
Okay, so for confirmation, today someone was about to crash his car in my car, and I was angry, yelling and something. So to apply equanimity is to calm myself down. Yusuf, it is impermanent. Yusuf, it is your craving that making you angry. It is not him. Then after being calm, this is me applying equanimity, right?
Exactly. And then ultimately you'll have some tranquility. But if you could maintain your tranquility all throughout your day, that's the general tranquility, just maintaining the peace all day long. The equanimity is in that situation where, oh my goodness, the car almost got crashed. You can still maintain your calmness and composure.
Okay, thank you. Understood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're welcome. Okay. I don't see any other questions, so let's go to the next one, which is chapter 15. Is there someone who would like to read this one? Okay, looks like Vibhav's going to read this one. Vibhav, this first part is the part that we've been reading and studying all the way through, so you can pick it up for this next part here.
Okay, thank you. One of 2 fruits to be predicted. Monks, the mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation is developed and cultivated. One of 2 fruits is to be predicted: either final knowledge, wisdom in this very life, or if there is a residue of clinging, the state of non-returner. And how, monks, is mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation developed and cultivated, so that one of 2 fruits is to be predicted: either final knowledge, wisdom in this very life, or if there is a residue of clinging, the state of non-returner. Here, monks, a monk develops the enlightenment factor of mindfulness, accompanied by mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation, as in chapter 14. He develops the enlightenment factor of equanimity, accompanied by mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation, based upon seclusion, freedom from strong feelings, and elimination, maturing and release. It is in this way that mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation, is developed and cultivated, so that one of 2 fruits is to be predicted: either final knowledge, wisdom in this very life, or if there is a residue of clinging, the state of non-returner. Leading to great good. Monks, when mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation is developed and cultivated, it leads to great good. And how, monks, is mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation developed and cultivated so that it leads to great good? Here, monks, a monk develops the enlightenment factor of mindfulness, accompanied by mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation, as in chapter 14. He develops the enlightenment factor of equanimity, accompanied by mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation, based upon seclusion, freedom from strong feelings, and elimination, maturing and release. It is in this way that mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation, is developed and cultivated, that it leads to great good. Leading to great security from bondage, enlightenment. Monks, when mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation is developed and cultivated, it leads to great security from bondage, enlightenment. And how, monks, is mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation developed and cultivated, so that it leads to great security from bondage, enlightenment. Here, monks, a monk develops the enlightenment factor of mindfulness, accompanied by mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation, as in chapter 14. He develops the enlightenment factor of equanimity, accompanied by mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation, based upon seclusion, freedom from strong feelings, and elimination, maturing and release. It is in this way that mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation is developed and cultivated, so it leads to great security from bondage, enlightenment, leading to a great sense of motivation. Monks, when mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation is developed and cultivated, it leads to a great sense of motivation. And how, monks, is mindfulness of breathing breathing mindfulness meditation developed and cultivated, so that it leads to a great sense of motivation. Here, a monk develops the enlightenment factor of mindfulness accompanied by mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation, as in chapter 14. He develops the enlightenment factor of equanimity, accompanied by mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation, based upon seclusion, freedom from strong feelings, elimination, maturing and release. It is in this way that mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation is developed and cultivated, so that it leads to great sense of motivation. Residing in great comfort. Monks, when mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation is developed and cultivated, it leads to residing in great comfort. And how monks is mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation developed and cultivated, so it leads to residing in great comfort. Here, a monk develops the enlightenment factor of mindfulness, accompanied by mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation, as in chapter 14. He develops the enlightenment factor of equanimity, accompanied by mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation, based upon seclusion, freedom from strong feelings, elimination, maturing and release. It is in this way that the mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation is developed and cultivated, so that it leads to residing in great comfort. Monks, just as the river Ganges slants, slopes, and inclines towards the east, so too a monk who develops and cultivates the 7 factors of enlightenment slants, slopes, and inclines towards Nibbana, enlightenment. And how does a monk develop and cultivate the 7 factors of enlightenment, so that he slants, slopes, and inclines towards Nibbana, enlightenment? Here, a monk develops the enlightenment factor of mindfulness, which is based upon seclusion, freedom from strong feelings, and elimination, maturing and release. He develops the enlightenment factor of investigation, which is based upon its seclusion, freedom from strong feelings, and elimination, maturing and release. He develops the enlightenment factor of energy, which is based upon seclusion, freedom from strong feelings, and elimination, maturing and release. He develops the enlightenment factor of joy, which is based upon seclusion, freedom from strong feelings, and elimination, maturing and release. He develops the enlightenment factor of tranquility, which is based upon seclusion, freedom from strong feelings, and elimination, maturing and release. He develops the enlightenment factor of concentration, which is based upon seclusion, freedom from strong feelings, and elimination, maturing and release. He develops the enlightenment factor of equanimity, which is based upon seclusion, freedom from strong feelings, and elimination, maturing and release. It is in this way, monks, that a monk develops and cultivates the 7 factors of enlightenment, that is, slants, slopes, and inclines towards Nibbana, enlightenment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vibhav. So this is a discourse that basically brings together the previous one that we were talking about, where the Buddha is essentially talking about how breathing mindfulness meditation helps to develop the 7 factors of enlightenment. And now he goes through and he says, okay, with this breathing mindfulness meditation and the 7 factors of enlightenment being practiced, here's the different benefits that you're going to experience. One is you're going to get to enlightenment potentially, or to the 3rd stage of enlightenment as a non-returner. That's one of the benefits of breathing mindfulness meditation and practicing the 7 factors of enlightenment. Then it leads to this great good, right? So that's just kind of more of a general thing, leading to great security from bondage. What bondage is when the mind is all bound up and it's experiencing discontentedness. It's not free. It's not liberated, because someone just says something disrespectful to you and all of a sudden you're angry, or somebody walks across your lawn and all of a sudden you're angry, or somebody looks at you in a certain way and all of a sudden you're angry or frustrated or being judgmental. Your mind's all bound up. It just takes somebody doing something simple, it triggers one of your cravings, and now your mind isn't actually liberated. So you can get this security from this bondage where you're no longer bound up. And it's the breathing mindfulness meditation and 7 factors of enlightenment that's doing that. Then the Buddha talks about this great sense of motivation, because when you have craving, desire, attachment and your mind's holding on, you'll be dull and lethargic and sometimes exhausted and tired because of that. The mind's being dragged down. Because if you get what you want in a particular day with your cravings being met, you'll feel like, it's such a good day. But if you go out into the world and you're not getting your cravings fulfilled, you'll feel exhausted and tired. You'll feel like it's a hectic day. But when you get rid of all of that, your mind can be free, and now you can have this sense of motivation and encouragement and enthusiasm all throughout your day. It's breathing mindfulness meditation and the 7 factors of enlightenment that are leading to that. Then the Buddha says, okay, breathing mindfulness meditation and these 7 factors of enlightenment leads to this great comfort where the mind and the body can just be comfortable, where you can exist in the world comfortably, where you don't have to always be longing, yearning for something else. If you've ever been at home and you're just not comfortable, you just feel like you want to go outside. I want to go do this. I want to go do that. I want to do this. I'm not content here. The mind's always chasing something. The grass is always greener on the other side. That's not comfortable for the mind. So it's this breathing mindfulness meditation and the 7 factors of enlightenment that's helping to train the mind to get rid of these cravings so that now the mind can experience this great comfort. Then the Buddha just goes into cultivating the 7 factors of enlightenment, because this is what slants, slopes, and inclines. Essentially, this is what leads to the development of the mind that's going to actually lead to enlightenment. So you need to know these 7 factors of enlightenment, particularly as your mind's in that 2nd and 3rd stage of enlightenment, because that's where you're really doing a lot of tweaking. But you can even use them before that. You can really tweak the mind. Whenever you see it's complacent or it's excited, you can bring it to the middle. Because the longer you allow your mind to dwell in that complacency, the harder it is to bring it out. The longer you allow the mind to live in that overactive, excited state, the harder it is to get the mind to come into the peace and the joy and the calmness and the composure. So you would like to really stamp this out. As soon as you see with your mindfulness that the mind's in either part of this spectrum, it's not in the middle, use the 7 factors of enlightenment to bring the mind to the middle. And the breathing mindfulness meditation is helping you to do that because it's training the mind to eliminate the cravings that are taking the mind to one side or the other. So any questions on this particular chapter? Remember, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or in Zoom. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So now let's go to chapter 16. Is there someone who would like to read this? Okay, Samantha. Go ahead, ma'am.
A monk who is not lacking of jhana. Monks, if for just the time of a snap of a finger, a monk develops mindfulness of breathing, he is called a monk who is not lacking of jhana, who acts upon the teachings of the teacher, who responds to his advice, and who does not eat the country's alms food, having produced no results or benefits. How much more then those who cultivate it?
Okay, thank you, Samantha. So the breathing mindfulness meditation, along with other teachings, is what leads to those enhanced qualities of mind that are experienced in the jhanas. So the Buddha is using this analogy of saying, okay, even if you develop the mind with breathing mindfulness meditation for the snap of a finger, you can make your way towards enlightenment. And he's just drawing a comparison here that's saying, okay, if you really actually cultivate breathing mindfulness meditation, then you can actually really make progress. Because even if you do it just for a short time, there's some benefit there. But if you regularly develop it over a consistent long-term period, that's where the real benefit is actually being experienced. In order to get to those jhanas, you need to act upon the teachings. You need to not just practice meditation, but you need to be practicing all those other aspects of the teachings as well, and responding to a teacher's advice and the guidance, being able to implement the things that you need. Essentially, a teacher is pointing out the treasure to be able to help you see the challenges that you need to improve in order to move the mind closer and closer to enlightenment. Then this one that the Buddha teaches here, where he says, who does not eat the country's alms food, having produced no results or benefits. If you can imagine all these different people that are ordained, like here in Thailand, you have anywhere between 200 to 300,000 people who are actually ordained. Now, there's an enormous effort each day to feed these individuals and provide them donations to be able to sustain their life, or even like you guys providing me support. If I was complacent and not really attending to breathing mindfulness meditation and all the other teachings, then you're accepting those donations without producing any results or benefit. The results of benefit are within your own mind, but then by improving your own mind, you then provide those teachings back to the students. So the Buddha encouraged people who were living off of the donations and the generosity of the household practitioners to make sure you're practicing the teachings. We don't see this very often today, where an ordained practitioner is maybe practicing the teachings very, very closely, and they're developing their own mind so that then they're able to offer those teachings back to the public. And in this situation, an individual would be eating the country's alms food, having not produced any results or benefits within their own mind. But then the karma that's coming back to the household practitioners is that the teachers who are living off of the donations of the students should be offering those teachings back. But they wouldn't have teachings to offer back if they haven't done the work within their own mind. So this is really key, where the Buddha is encouraging people who are ordained and accepting offerings from the donors and the household practitioners to really dedicate focus and attention to your practice. If you can imagine, if the Buddha was actually trying to share teachings of how to get to enlightenment, but over here on the side, he wasn't meditating, or he wasn't practicing right speech or right action or any of these other teachings, who would have ever interested to learn with him? And who would have ever thought that he could potentially be enlightened to be able to help them to get to enlightenment? So an individual should be not only practicing the teaching, or not only teaching the teachings, but they should be practicing the teachings as an example for their students, so that their students can see what it takes to actually get to enlightenment. And that would be one who does not eat the country's alms food, having produced no results or benefits, because they actually are producing benefits, because they're doing that work within their own mind, and then they're sharing that with other people, so that the other people can understand the wisdom of what it takes to cultivate the mind. So let me know what questions you guys have here. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So it looks like Samantha has a question. Go ahead, ma'am.
Yes, I'm just wondering if you have any idea what the ordained practitioners learn and teach in Thailand. You know, you mentioned the large number of ordained practitioners who seemingly would not be following this teaching. So do you have an idea of what monks and practitioners and students actually use as learning material?
Yeah, it comes down to each individual student, each individual practitioner, each individual person, because they have to make the choices for themselves of how they're going to learn and where they're going to learn. The vast majority of people who are ordained, they're not necessarily studying the original words of the Buddha. There are certainly ordained practitioners who do that, but it's a very small fraction compared to the numbers of ordained practitioners in the world. So they could be learning anything from oral traditions, like if they're ordained at a temple, the master at that particular temple is just teaching them orally of things that have been handed down from person to person to person to person. And in this kind of environment, things can easily be changed. They could be learning those kinds of things. Or they could be learning from books or other resources of people who did learn in an oral tradition and pass down things person to person to person, and they happen to write a book. And now, because they wrote a book, somebody thinks that, oh, this must be the teachings of the Buddha. But until somebody gets back to the true teachings of the Buddha, his actual words, like you guys are studying, you have no ability to even get to the first stage of enlightenment, let alone enlightenment itself. So the vast majority of the world isn't studying with the original words. They're studying either through the oral tradition, or they're just studying books of people who learned through the oral tradition. And these things have all been changed and modified so extensively that people are really being led astray, and they just don't even know that that's even the case. Oftentimes they're practicing rites and rituals and ceremonies and worship, even prayer and things of this nature. There's a lot of people in the Buddhist path, even ordained practitioners, who don't even know what causes anger. If you ask somebody, like, what causes anger, they wouldn't even be able to answer that, where that's like the very first teaching of the Buddha, where he teaches the Four Noble Truths, that anybody who's a sincere practitioner, a serious practitioner on the path to enlightenment, we need to know that just to even get started on the path. But you'll be surprised by how many people, not just ordained practitioners, but even household practitioners, who just don't even know that information, that very simple, basic thing.
Do you think in Thailand that most people or most of the students who are at temples are learning through the oral tradition?
Yeah, either the oral tradition or books written by people who learn through the oral tradition.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, see if we have any other questions. All right, I don't see any other questions anywhere. So let's go to chapter 17. Is there someone who would like to read this one? Okay, Vibhav. Go ahead, sir.
Breathing mindfulness meditation in excellent and peaceful dwelling. The Buddha commented on the incidences of monks dying through suicide by themselves or by encouraging and assisting others to do so. On this occasion, the perfectly enlightened one has given them the discourses of Anapanasati, breathing mindfulness meditation. Monks, this concentration by mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation, when developed and cultivated, is peaceful and superb, an excellent and peaceful dwelling. It dissolves and extinguishes right on the spot evil, unwholesome thought states whenever they arise. Just as, monks, in the last month of the hot season, when a mass of dust and dirt has swelled up, a great rain cloud of the season disperses it and extinguishes it on the spot. So too, concentration by mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation, when developed and cultivated, is peaceful and superb, an excellent and peaceful dwelling, and it dissolves and extinguishes on the spot evil, unwholesome states whenever they arise. And how is this so? Here, once, a monk, having gone to the forest, to the foot of a tree, or to an empty hut, sits down. Having folded his legs crosswise, straightened his body and set of mindfulness in front of him, just mindfully breathes in, mindfully breathes out. Breathing in long, he knows, I breathe in long. Or breathing out long, he knows, I breathe out long. Breathing in short, he knows, I breathe in short. Or breathing out short, he knows, I breathe out short. He trains thus, experiencing the whole body, repeats of chapter 1. He trains thus, reflecting on letting go, I will breathe in. He trains thus, reflecting on letting go, I will breathe out. It is in this way, monks, that concentration by mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation, is developed and cultivated so that it is peaceful and superb, an excellent and peaceful dwelling, and dissolves and extinguishes on the spot evil and unwholesome states whenever they arise. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vibhav. So this is a discourse where the Buddha is saying that any evil, unwholesome states that come up in the mind, they can be eliminated on the spot with breathing mindfulness meditation. That's not going to be the case for someone who's never meditated, right? You can't just go from never meditating to boom, there's this magic that breathing mindfulness meditation is going to instantly eliminate unwholesome things that are coming up in the mind. But as you develop and cultivate this practice, you'll see that that's the case. Like you can have a certain unwholesome thought come up in your mind and you could sit down and do some meditation and boom, it'll eliminate it out of the mind if your mind has been matured because there's that release. Here, the Buddha is giving this discourse based on incidents of people who were killing themselves, or there were other people who were assisting others to kill themselves. Because this is one of the things that can happen is if somebody's not getting the guidance that they need, their mind can kind of implode on itself. And if you can imagine during the lifetime of the Buddha, there were thousands and thousands of people learning from him, and not everybody was close and learning with him and coming to him and seeking guidance. They might have been on the fringes, just learning and dabbling with a few things, and the same difficulties and struggles that led them to getting on the path to enlightenment, those same difficulties and struggles exist in the mind even when they're on the path to enlightenment. And now when things start shifting and changing, there can be these thoughts of suicide perhaps. And if you're experiencing that, what the Buddha is describing to you is to sit down and do breathing mindfulness meditation. No need to let those thoughts of suicide permeate in the mind. You can train the mind to cut that off and let it go through the breathing mindfulness meditation. So in the past, where maybe if you've experienced this, where the mind was just permeating and stewing and ruminating with suicidal thoughts, instead now you have something to do. Instead of just sitting there and letting that stew in the mind, you can actually switch and redirect the mind by doing some breathing mindfulness meditation. That's what that's doing for the mind. And it's not just with suicide that an individual is able to do that with, but any unwholesome thoughts. If you have a craving to go have sex outside of your existing relationship, or you have a craving to go spend a bunch of money at the mall because your mind's chasing pleasant feelings and wants to buy a bunch of new jewelry or shoes or something like that, you could use breathing mindfulness meditation to be able to help you to do that. If you're noticing jealousy come up in the mind, you could use breathing mindfulness meditation to do that. So there's plenty of things that you could use and employ breathing mindfulness meditation to eliminate these evil, unwholesome states. Let me know what questions you guys have here. This is the chapter 17 of volume 7. Okay, there's no questions here. So now let's go to chapter 18. Let me see what we've got here. This is the long, long one. Okay, yeah, this is the one where the Buddha is basically breaking down his meditation. I'll talk you guys through this because we've actually read this many times. Okay, what he's doing here is he's breaking down his guidance on meditation, and he's showing you how each section of the guidance of his meditation is leading to the cultivation of the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So for those of you guys that have been reading this book, this first part is the part that we've been reading over and over and over again, where it's basically the entire guidance of the Buddha providing guidance on meditation. But then what he does here is he shows you exactly what's helping you to lead to the cultivation of the mindfulness of the bodily sensations. It's these first two, or these first a few phrases here, where you're focused on the breath, and now you know that the breath is either long or short, meaning your mind's focused on the breath. But then as you start experiencing certain things in the body, experiencing the whole body, when you experience like a scratch or an itch or something like this, you calm that by cutting it off and letting it go. That's how you develop awareness of the bodily sensations. The bodily sensations that we're talking about with the 4 foundations of mindfulness are the bodily sensations associated with craving, desire, attachment that the mind is experiencing, like the rising of tingling in the body, tightening in the chest, tightening in the throat, heat in the face, pressure in the skull. As you're noticing those things in day-to-day life, or if you're noticing it in meditation, that's what you like to cut off and let go of. But the way that you develop that insight and that mindfulness and the ability to be able to see that is through understanding through meditation, that when you experience any bodily sensations, whether it's the itching or something like this, you cut that off and let that go. You don't allow the mind to be disturbed by it. You notice that it arises, it changes and fades away, but you would like to cut it off and bring the mind back to the breath. This is what's going to help you to develop that first foundation of mindfulness, where the mind can be aware of the bodily sensations associated with craving, desire, attachment when these discontent feelings are about to actually be formed in the mind. And that would be ideal if you cut it off and let it go as a bodily sensation. But if you don't, it's then going to come into the mind as a feeling. And now here's the Buddha breaking down his guidance on meditation and explaining to you how you're developing the awareness of the feelings in the mind. Then he does the same thing for the condition of the mind, that you're generally aware of the condition of the mind and what's actually happening inside the mind. Then he talks about how his guidance is helping you to understand the mental objects and be aware of those mental objects in the mind. The mental objects are the 10 fetters. That's what you're working to purify out of the mind. And you're going to need awareness when they're arising. So you're going to need to know what are the 10 fetters, what each one of them are individually, not just the names of them, but what they actually are. You're going to need to know the symptoms that they produce so that you can see those symptoms occurring in your mind and in your day-to-day life. You're going to need to know how to eliminate them. Then you're going to need to know how to know that you've actually eliminated them. I do this in the 2 retreats, that the one in January that I teach the first 3 fetters in there. We spend an entire hour and a half. So you know what it is, the symptoms, how to eliminate it, how to know that you've eliminated it. And then in August here in Chiang Mai, I also teach a class or a retreat where I go through each individual fetter one by one, about an hour and a half on each individual fetter, the 10 fetters. So this is how you develop your awareness of the mental objects so that you know what it is, the symptoms, how to eliminate it, how to know that you've actually eliminated it. When you're developing breathing mindfulness meditation, it's helping you to develop the 4 foundations of mindfulness. But you need to cultivate this wisdom outside of meditation so that you can now use the qualities from your meditation that you've cultivated to then spot the symptoms outside of meditation. Okay? And the Buddha is just essentially using some analogies to help you understand that. So any questions on this particular chapter? I just kind of walk you through it because it's just segmenting things that we've already studied in this particular program. Looks like Samantha has a question. Go ahead, ma'am.
Yes, if you'll scroll down, I guess on page 89, under your explanation of things, having removed craving and displeasure in regard to the world.
Yes.
There's a sentence that says, instead one needs to recognize that the world functions as it does. You would no longer have the delusion that the world is broken or needs to be fixed. And then I understand, that we all need to work on ourselves so that we can improve the world. But that sentence, in a way, makes it seem as if there should be kind of inaction to trying to improve things. Let's just say, you see genocide or something like that. I know that that's not what it means, but that's how it sounds to me.
Okay. So what this is saying is that instead of thinking that we need to go off into the world to change the world, the mind needs to understand that the ultimate goal is to understand the natural laws, that things are happening the way that they're happening based on these natural laws. Now, when you understand the natural laws, that's what you're doing in order to develop your own mind. Whether you go out and try to help with something like genocide, that's a personal choice for each individual to make, but you would be ill-equipped to do that if you didn't understand the natural laws. If you just went out into the world and maybe you're holding picket signs or beating drums or, acting with civil obedience or things like this, the mind isn't understanding the natural laws, that the reason why something like genocide is happening is because of craving, anger, and ignorance. And those individuals who are involved in genocide, for example, their mind is affected by craving, anger, and ignorance. And just choosing to stand on the street corner and hold picket signs and beat drums, this isn't changing the craving, anger, and ignorance. If we understand what the real problem is here is the craving, anger, and ignorance, then we understand what the solution is generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. And each individual has to choose to cultivate the generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. So those people involved in genocide, for example, you can't change their mind just by beating some drums and holding picket signs. But if somebody was choosing to do some kind of action, like protesting or something like this, they would be very wise to implement some generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. There needs to be some amount of education as part of their efforts to help educate the world to cultivate wisdom, to understand how genocide is unwise. So by understanding the natural laws, it'll actually make you more effective in any kind of action that you choose to take, that you would understand that just getting angry and throwing paint on people or spray painting things or breaking into stores and looting and turning over cars and things like this isn't going to lead to any kind of change in the world. Instead, we might do some kind of organized approach where we have certain educational component to what we're doing in order to help people to understand how genocide is unwise and it's leading to unwholesome results. So by having the understanding of the natural laws, you'll actually be more effective at going out into the world and helping other people cultivate wisdom. But in that situation, you're not changing the world because you can't change the natural laws. But what you can do is you can understand the natural laws, and now understanding the natural laws, that the true problem in these people's minds that are performing genocide is craving, anger, and ignorance. Now, whatever you choose to do, you know that you need to help these individuals to cultivate wisdom. That it's just a lack of wisdom on their part, that they have craving, anger, and ignorance. And now, whatever we choose to do, whether it's protesting or having organized events or handing out leaflets or having websites or whatever it is that we do in order to try to help eliminate genocide from the planet, we need to have an educational component so that people can cultivate wisdom. And you'll be able to do that much better if you've cultivated the wisdom of the natural laws first. Because if you just go out there with the anger and hostility, it's not going to fix anything, because there's just going to be looting and destruction and personal injury and fights and murders and arguments and all these things. And that's not going to lead to real actual improvement in the world. What improves the world is when each individual works on their own mind. But we can incentivize that, but we're not going to be able to force people to do that. So that's why, like me holding classes at the temple, I can hold classes and I can put out signs and let people know that I'm holding these classes, but it's up to them to be able to come and learn and grow and develop. So we could understand that there's something like genocide in the world, and we can put out organized campaigns to educate people how genocide is wrong and unwise, but we can't actually change the people themselves. They have to choose to do that work. And with that kind of wisdom, it'll make us more effective at implementing improvements where people have the opportunity to learn rather than just, harshness and bitterness and hostility that oftentimes gets put out into the world when something unwholesome like this is happening.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, there's no harm in taking action. It's just that we would like to do that wisely with the understanding of the natural laws. Okay. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions anywhere. So now let's go to the next chapter. This is chapter 19. Is there someone who would like to read this? Okay, it looks like Samantha and Elizabeth. Let me go with Elizabeth since she hasn't read yet today.
Okay, thank you. Am I on mute? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yep.
Okay. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you, David. Protecting one's own mind, you protect others. Monks, once in the past, an acrobat set up his bamboo pole and addressed his apprentice, Medikalika, thus, "Come, dear Medikalika, climb the bamboo pole and stand on my shoulders." Having replied, "Yes, teacher," the apprentice, Medikalika, climbed up the bamboo pole and stood on the teacher's shoulders. The acrobat then said to the apprentice, Medikalika, "You protect me, dear Medikalika, and I will protect you." Thus guarded by one another, protected by one another, we'll display our skills, collect our fee, and get down safely from the bamboo pole. When this was said, the apprentice, Medikalika, replied, "That's not the way to do it, teacher. You protect yourself, teacher, and I'll protect myself." Thus, each self-guarded and self-protected will display our skills, collect our fee, and get down safely from the bamboo pole. That's the method there, the perfectly enlightened one said. It's just as the apprentice, Medikalika, said to the teacher, "I will protect myself, monks. Thus should the 4 foundations of mindfulness be practiced. I will protect others. Monks, thus should the 4 foundations of mindfulness be practiced. Protecting one's own mind, monks, one protects others. Protecting others, one protects one's own mind." And how is it, monks, that by protecting one's own mind, one protects others? By the pursuit, development, and cultivation of the 4 foundations of mindfulness. It is in such a way that by protecting one's own mind, one protects others. And how is it, monks, that by protecting others, one protects one's own mind? By patience, harmlessness, loving kindness, and compassion. It is in such a way that by protecting others, one protects one's own mind. I will protect my own mind. Monks, thus should the 4 foundations of mindfulness be practiced. I will protect others. Monks, thus should the 4 foundations of mindfulness be practiced. Protecting one's own mind, monks, one protects others. Protecting others, one protects one's own mind.
All right. Thank you, Liz. So here, this is a great little story here where there's the apprentice and the acrobat who's a teacher. And the teacher says to the apprentice, like, hey, let's protect each other, right? And this is typically how we think in the unenlightened state, that there's this, protection, that we're going to protect each other. And maybe this is like in a couple relationship or other types of relationships. This is actually attachment, where the apprentice, being really smart, says, no. That's not the way. Let's both look out for our own protection. Let's make decisions about our own protection. And by protecting ourselves and making sure we don't do anything unsafe, we are then protecting others. So what the Buddha is basically teaching here is that by you protecting your own contentedness, your own peacefulness, your own wellness, you're then protecting others. That it's not like I should be responsible for your contentedness and you should be responsible for my contentedness. that would be wrong view. That would be attachment. That would be craving, desire, attachment in a relationship. Instead, it's, hey, I'll look out for my contentedness, and I'm responsible to protect my own contentedness, and you're responsible to protect your own contentedness. And in this way, our minds are both fully protected, and then we're not causing harm to each other. That's what the Buddha is saying, is by protecting your own contentedness or protecting one's own mind, you protect others because you're not causing harm to others. And the way that you protect your own mind is by practicing patience, harmlessness, loving kindness, and compassion. And by doing this, you're protecting your own mind. And now you won't cause harm to others. This is a great little story that's really short, that's helping you to see how to strip away attachment. Because oftentimes we think like there's some kind of honorability in saying like, oh, I'm my brother's keeper. I'm going to protect you, right? And you protect me. You scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. But that's not what the Buddha is teaching you. He's teaching you to pay attention to your own contentedness, that no one else can be responsible for your mind. You need to be responsible for your own mind. So here, this is a great little teaching for you. Chapter 19 in volume 7. Any questions on this one? Okay, I don't see any questions. So Samantha, if you'd still like to read, we got this last chapter here, chapter 20. You're welcome to read it if you like.
I'll read it, but someone else can. I was just volunteering before because no one else was.
Sure. Would anyone else like to
Someone else
read?
that wants to go?
Looks like you're up.
No? Okay.
Samantha, yeah.
I'll do it.
Okay.
All right. Breathing mindfulness meditation for abandoning mental distraction. Monks, there are these 3 things. What 3? Being difficult to correct, unwholesome friendship, and mental distraction. These are 3 things. 3 other things that are to be developed for abandoning these 3 things. What 3? 1, being easy to correct is to be developed for abandoning being difficult to correct. 2, wholesome friendship is to be developed for abandoning unwholesome friendship. 3, mindfulness of breathing is to be developed for abandoning mental distraction. These 3 things are to be developed for abandoning the former 3 things.
Sure. Thank you, Samantha. So here, the Buddha is giving you 3 things that you can do in order to abandon other things that are going to be, problematic for you. So if you weren't easy to correct, that means like you're being judgmental, you're being frustrated, you're being agitated, maybe you're speaking with wrong speech and things like this. And now when a teacher is trying to help you to be able to see that, now you're, kind of pushing that off, or your ego comes up, or you're not interested to hear the advice of the teacher to be able to help you. Well, if you're difficult to correct, how would you ever be able to get to enlightenment? Because that's the whole role of a teacher. If a student could fully see their entire mind, they wouldn't actually be doing those unwise things. So this is where a teacher actually comes in, is they actually help to point out treasure for you so you can see things that you're not seeing yourself. And a teacher who's sharing with you without any expectation of anything in return, they're doing that out of the kindness of their heart. Their only interest is to help you get to enlightenment. They're not degrading you. They're not disparaging you. They're doing it very respectfully. A teacher needs to be able to point out improvement for their students in a very respectful, kind, and polite way. And if a teacher's doing that out of the kindness of their heart, if a student was difficult about that and was pushing that away, that individual is going to have a really hard time to ever get to enlightenment. But if someone's easy to take in advice and guidance from their teacher, wow, this person can make all kinds of improvement as they develop on the path. So this is a quality that you would like to be able to cultivate. Then if you have wholesome friends, this is going to help you to associate with individuals who are doing wholesome things. Now, you're not going to have perfect friends, right? Because the only individual who's going to actually be functioning perfectly is an enlightened being. An enlightened being isn't going to be doing any unwise moral conduct. They're not going to be doing any harmful things, but you probably don't know too many enlightened beings. So you're going to have people in your life that are doing unwise things, but that doesn't mean you necessarily need to end the relationship. But you would like to cultivate more and more people who are doing wholesome things because your mind's going to lean towards that. Whereas if you had people who are doing unwholesome things as friends, your mind's going to tend to lean towards that. So you would like to pay attention to the types of people that you involve in your life. And you might decide to use the 5 precepts as a baseline guidance for that. Because you know for yourself, if you're not practicing the 5 precepts, this is going to be problematic for your life because you're going to be making unwise decisions. And if other people aren't practicing them, this is going to cause problems for them. And if you're a friend of theirs, it's going to cause problems for you. So even though other people might not know the 5 precepts as the 5 precepts, they've learned these teachings in other places, perhaps, to a certain degree. So you can use your understanding of the 5 precepts to discern, not judging, but to discern whether or not it'd be wise to associate with someone who's maybe making wise decisions about these types of things. So if you saw someone who was killing, stealing, having sexual misconduct, who's lying, who's taking substances that cause heedlessness, well, we don't need to judge these people and look down on them and consider them to be bad, so to speak, but instead just realize through wise decision making that if you associate with individuals that are doing those things are going to affect you as well based on your choice to be their friend. So you would like to associate with wholesome individuals. The Buddha teaches this just to get to the first stage of enlightenment, that you're going to need to be able to do this. So you're first going to need the wisdom of how to choose wholesome friends. And then as you're choosing wholesome friends, you would like to be able to learn and grow and develop, because that's going to help you if you've got friends that are practicing generosity and loving kindness, because a wholesome friend is a wise friend. You're looking for a wise friend. Someone who's practicing generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom is going to be wise and a wholesome friend. Again, they're not going to be perfect unless they're enlightened, but at least you can associate with people who are into wholesome things, and this is going to help your own mind. Then lastly, he talks about here about meditation, that this is going to help you abandon mental distraction, where there's a muddled mind or confusion. And that's because the mind in breathing mindfulness meditation is cultivating mindfulness or awareness of mind and concentration, clarity and focus. So you would like to be able to practice your breathing mindfulness meditation 2 or 3 times a day, building up to 30 minutes or more, realizing this can take 6 months, a year, even 2 years to accomplish. But what it's going to do is slowly but surely abandon any kind of mental distraction. You should start noticing the mind becoming crisper and crisper and clearer and clearer. And this is going to function really well for you, or this is going to be of great fruit and benefit for you, because now with that focus and clarity, that concentration, you're going to be able to make wiser and wiser decisions in your day-to-day life, which is going to produce more and more beneficial results. So it's breathing mindfulness meditation that is the catalyst to being able to make wise decisions, extinguishing your unwholesome results, your unwholesome karma, and thus producing more and more wholesome karma. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this one. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So this takes us up to chapter 20 in our book. And next week, we're going to be in chapters 21 through 34. This is a pretty short book where it's going to end on chapter 34. So we're going to actually do 14 chapters next week and going through all of those. So if you'd like to study ahead so you can see the words of the Buddha in my words, you can do that. And then after that, we're going to be starting the next volume, which is the volume 8, which is titled The Foremost Householder. This is where it's a collection of teachings specifically for household practitioners. If you are ordained, you could still learn these teachings and it's still going to help you, but they're really geared towards household practitioners. But the same teachings that a household practitioner needs, the ordained practitioners are going to need those too. So if you're an ordained practitioner who's learning with me, you could also learn those as well. Tomorrow in the group learning program, I'm going to be in chapter 14 of our book. This is titled Cultivating Healthy Mental States, Loving Kindness, Compassion, Sympathetic Joy, and Equanimity. This is where you're learning about the 4 healthy mental states that you can employ in order to be like prescriptions for certain symptoms in the mind. The Buddha is oftentimes thought of like a doctor who's looking at symptoms and then providing a prescription. But you can be your own very best doctor by understanding what the symptoms are in your mind and what these 4 healthy mental states are that you can employ in order to eradicate those from the mind. So you'll be able to learn that this Sunday, if you'd like, either through the live class or the recording. And then, of course, on Wednesday, I'm going to be doing breathing mindfulness meditation with students and opening up to any and all questions that you guys have. So thank you very much for those of you guys that read. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for being interested in learning these teachings. As you guys would like to learn more, you're always welcome to attend classes or reach out for any kind of support. Have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Take care. Sawadee Kap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.